I think the danger to the Bitcoin community, and this will probably happen sooner rather than later, is that you'll get clamped down on hard. And that strikes me as highly probable. I think the way that's likely to happen is that the governments will try to instigate, implement their own digital currencies, and then do everything they can to squash out competitors. And you think fiat currency is bad, you wait till it's fiat currency with a digital spin, and wait until people can track all of your purchases and decide using some scheme of fiat when you're acting unethically with regards to your choice of, let's say, consumer item.
Right.
Do you really need that automobile? That'll be the next question, coming out down the pipes in the next 10 years. What makes you think you should have an automobile when the whole planet is at stake? Yeah, well, who made you final arbiter of value?
And to fight that tyranny, we need faith in an ideal. And I guess that's what Bitcoin represents to us. So.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's a practicality too. That's the other thing that's kind of admirable about the Bitcoin community, delusional though it may be, let's say, at least you're bloody well put your money where your mouth is. Well, that's something, isn't it? It's not just, as you said, it's not just cheap talk.
Right.
You're willing to stake your future and maybe the future of your family on this, and so, it looks like you're really in the game, and if you're really in the game, well, then maybe that does facilitate a certain kind of ethical transformations, highly probable, just to start to think in that long-term way and to start to think about questions of ultimate value. It's like, how could that not have a transformative effect? It certainly does on people. And so wouldn't it be lovely if this all worked out? I'm, as a trained social scientist and a pessimistic one in some sense, I'm always looking for the unexpected consequence. That's also what makes me somewhat conservative, I would say, in my political leanings. Bitcoin is a radical social experiment, and do you worry, Bitcoiners in general, do you worry that by replacing a fiat currency, or the fiat currency, or any fiat currency maybe, ultimately, are we going to destabilize things that fiat currencies are doing that we don't understand? Like how much utility is there in allowing your government, assuming it's regulated by a vote and it's a free society, is there utility in allowing the government to make fundamental financial decisions that Bitcoin would threaten, in a negative way? And like I said, I'm not an economist, and I know there are arguments about why that won't be the case, but arguments in reality aren't the same thing.
As I said to you backstage, and quoting you actually, there is stability in the hierarchy, even if that hierarchy is somewhat tyrannical. So this is a massive change, right? If this is actually the disruption of gold, well, the whole world's built on top of gold right now. Central banking's built on top of gold. Nation states are built on top of the central bank. So there could be a period of instability, let's say.
What does it say on the dollar bill? Isn't it in God we trust?
Yeah, but the actuality is in Fed we trust.
Yeah, well, so it's corrupted, and, Bitcoin purists might be right about your presuppositions. Well, we've wandered through a fair bit of conceptual territory today. I don't see any obvious manner in which the presuppositions of the Bitcoin community violate fundamental psychological principles. Quite the contrary, but like I said, I'm not an economist, that's for sure, and there's lots of things I don't know, so I'd hesitate to give it my unwarranted stamp of approval, for whatever that's worth, and very little, but it's an extremely interesting experiment, and I find it quite compelling, the idea of an incorruptible storehouse of value. You store value in your reputation, and that means you store value in the ethics of your behavior. The Bitcoin notion, I suppose, in some sense, is you have an unerring marker for that now. So, well,
I would
that'd be something.
If I could add here, perhaps, too, that we would also seek to store our economic value and the money with the best reputation, right? That's what the U.S. dollar is currently, what gold is historically.
Yeah, and those are promises.
Yes.
Like fundamentally, you could ask, well, what is money? Money is a promise.
Yes.
So it's based on trust.
Contract with the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, and with strangers, right? With people you don't know, which is really quite remarkable. Right. And so it's all dependent on interpersonal trust, and well, that's dependent on all sorts of fundamental things.
Right.
But because it's dependent on trust, you would think the most trustworthy currency, well, hopefully that would be the one that rises to the top.
Yeah, there's a work by a great thinker in the space named Nick Szabo, and he actually describes money as the trust minimized asset. And what he means by that is that wherever you can store your economic value that's maximally insulated from the opinions and actions of others, you don't need to trust others, right? We don't need to trust. I don't need to trust that you trust gold. Gold just has a market cap by the free market.
We can trust by assumption.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, and that actually constitutes wealth.
Minimizing interpersonal trust to maximize
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I had this experience. I played a lot with eBay, and eBay was, when it first made itself manifest, people were trying to market, I write you a check that bounces and you send me junk, and and eBay dies, and so you have a third party verify the transactions, right? Escrow.
Yeah, escrow. Okay.
So people marketed their escrow services for eBay, and for a percentage of the transaction they would verify the exchange. But it turned out that people were so honest it was unnecessary, like seriously unnecessary. And then if you played on eBay for any length of time, you soon came to realize they started eventually putting in reputational markers, right, which was percentage of satisfied customers. And if you fell below, like if 98% of your customers were satisfied, you were doing a bad job. If you were a good seller, it was 99 or 100. Some of them, many people with 10,000 transactions had 100% ratings. And so that was so cool to see, and it shows you how civilized a society can be, where the default exchange between geographically distant strangers who will never meet again is honesty. And you think that's the sign of wealth. That's the unerring sign of wealth. If you live in a culture where the default transaction between strangers is honest exchange, everyone's rich. In any case, the Marxist presupposition is that it's mutual exploitation that defines our economic relationship. But what if it's mutual trust? Mm-hmm. And I think eBay is a great example of that. It's like, no, it wasn't exploitation, because that was certainly possible. It was mutual trust. And, eBay unfroze a lot of capital.
Yes.
Right? And the reason it wasn't even so much that it was a technological revolution, although it was in some sense. The reason it could do that is because the default transaction between Americans is trust. And that's something, man. That's a hell of an accomplishment. So that's another example of the storage of value in reputation.
Yes.
You guys, speaking broadly, your culture is so bloody civilized that you can depend on the integrity of strangers almost all the time. And just think about how easy that makes your life. When you were talking about trust earlier, it's like, well, you have to earn my trust, let's say, in a society that's skeptical. You know how bloody hard it is to earn someone's trust?
Very expensive.
Oh my God, it takes forever. And one exception can violate it. Yeah. And here we are in this unbelievably fortunate circumstance that characterizes free societies where, no, I'll just trust you. How'll that be? It's like, well, what kind of fool are you? You just trust a stranger.
And technologies are so impactful on this, because who would have imagined we now summon a car on a smartphone and jump into the back seat with a stranger for an Uber ride. Absolutely. But again, based on that reputation system.
Or use Airbnb. Right. Like one of the things I always thought of as completely miraculous, I've never been able to get accustomed to renting a car at an airport. It's like, it's so ridiculous. You can just fly somewhere that you've never been, where no one knows you, and you can give this guy a card, and he'll give you an $80,000 car that's brand new. Like, here it is. Sorry it took 5 minutes. Yeah, well, next time maybe you could do it a little quicker. We'll do our best. And that's a complete bloody miracle that works. You think about how unlikely that is, and yet people just take it for granted, and it's all predicated on this underlying trust and on reputational integrity.